gentlemen, Tim's flagship podcast, episode 322. I'm your host, Jamie. The Celtic go 9 points clear. I'm joined by Stephen.
Welcome, me flaggers.
And Melly.
Yes.
Unbelievable. I mean, we said before we broke up for the World Cup, we wanted to get a firm grip. We wanted to keep a hold of this league, keep things ticking over, keep it warm for Daddy coming home. And Rangers have just laid it on a plate for us.
Yeah, like Celtic have been winning. They won the 2 games, so did their part. And you're like, come on, Hearts, you're not going to get anything there.
No.
St Mirren, we struggled up there, but again, I'm always just prepare myself for the worst, hope for the best. Boy, oh boy, we got some of the best, didn't we? Drop points in Paisley, eh?
And so Stephen Robinson said prior to the match, if St Mirren played all their games at home, they would be top of the league. I think it's a bit of jiggery pokery. I think he's also played more home games than the majority of the league anyway.
Crucially though, you don't. I mean, you don't do that.
No, it's not how it works.
Yeah,
it's not how it works. But I don't want to slag St Mirren too much because, they took points off us as well.
Yeah.
Rangers managed to get a better result and they end up, they went to St Mirren and dropped points. But I didn't see that coming.
No, I didn't at all. I'd
Really?
all but given up on it.
No, I didn't see it coming. Did you?
No, seen it coming,
Well,
but
there you go then. Shut up.
Stephen, when I was asking him at the weekend, he said Gio's beleaguered and the scraping by every single game, even the Hearts game, 1-0 at home, boos seem to be ringing out all over the place. So every game they're going into, you're like, they could drop points here.
It's always the unexpected ones though, isn't it? Because I remember there was a game coming up, a weekend coming up where Celtic were playing Livingston and Rangers were playing Aberdeen, and I thought, I've got a wee eye on this. This could be quite an interesting one. And then just went out and gubbed Aberdeen. But it's always the smaller ones that tends to trip them up. I don't think it could have been any more fun on that day though. Of course it would have been better if they'd lost altogether, but I think there was some late drama and it went on for ages. There was 9 extra minutes added on because of a head knock, but I was on my way to the game when St Mirren scored, punching the roof of the car and all that. It was brilliant. And then I was heading to the game and I completely lost signal. I was listening to sports or the BBC Scotland on the way, lost my signal, and it was only when I got to the game a crowd, like a roar erupted from around the stadium. I was like, there we go. So I wasn't expecting it. I can't say I was expecting it, but I was brilliant. What a start to the day it was, and it really, Celtic just had to go out and get the job done to go 9 points clear. It wasn't always plain sailing at all. We'll get into that later on, but it just shows you Celtic just find a way, even in those circumstances, because as much as it was great start to the day, a certain element of pressure goes on the home team because the crowd are all turning up in party mode because they've obviously heard the result, but the team need to remain focused and get the job done. But we're all like, we're going to hurry up and get these 3 points so we can go 9 points clear. So a thoroughly enjoyable day out.
How big a gap is it?
9 points, mate. So it's
is it one hand on the title stuff? Is it stuff like that, you think?
But because we're sort of finishing up a bit earlier than usual, it's not the usual winter break. And like you kind of remember last year going into the winter break, Celtic drew 0-0 with St Mirren and fell 6 points behind. And at that point, we were just get to this break so we can get some players in and hope for the best. And so going in 6 points behind was difficult for Celtic, but you thought, right, get a few players in. Doesn't he feel like this right now? Because Celtic are a juggernaut. That's 14 wins out of 15 league games. That's incredible form. It's only really in fact, it is only the invincible treble that's ahead of it. I think they'd drawn one game by this point. So it's incredible form, and to turn this around, realistic, you're looking at Rangers win every single game. Every single game, having to beat us 3 times and not drop another point because Celtic are going to win a lot of games as well. So the goal difference as well is monumental. So it's going to be difficult, but that's not our problem. What Celtic need to do is what we've done at the weekend and go out and win the games, because we've seen if we just keep adding that wee bit of pressure where it looks like we're going to drop points, like last week at Dundee United, going into the last minute, we get the victory. Like during the week, Motherwell come back into the game, get the victory, and like this one, go behind Ross County. And it's always these games coming up to this break, don't drop points. Celtic could have easily dropped points in 3 games there. They chose not to. They chose to go out and win the games. Rangers dropped points in 2 out of 3 of them.
I think that's what's important about Celtic keep getting these wins, though, Stephen, because if you're the Rangers manager, whoever it might be, come the end of the World Cup, it's currently Giovanni. If you're looking at this, and as Melly says, you've always doing the equation in your head, thinking, right, how many games do we have to win? Well, maybe Celtic will drop points here, maybe Celtic will drop. You're watching Celtic and going, they just refuse to lose.
Yeah.
They absolutely will. A bit like the Templar, we absolutely will not stop. And even you think we're out, as Melly said, or a goal behind, or bad VAR decisions, but we'll talk about, we just keep winning. And it's getting a bit like seasons gone by where things haven't gone our way, and you're looking across the road and you're looking across the water and you're going, right, well, where are they going to drop points? And you're just going, they're never going to do it. It's like head in the hands. They're never going to, and that's what Rangers must feel watching us. Rangers fans, Rangers managers, Rangers players, and that's probably part of the reason why they look so disinterested, because already November, they're looking at this league going, what's the best we can hope for this season? The Scottish Cup, still need to beat Celtic to win that. The League Cup, nobody really cares about that. The league is everything. The league is everything. And really, it's slipping out of grasp for them very, very quickly, and there seems to be no way back.
Well, look at that. In the past, I mean, I'm going back many years now, but we've had games where or leagues rather, that we've failed to win the league and then win a cup after that, and nobody's really cared about it. It's like one of those forgotten cups. I think it happened in the 2005 season, won the cup after having blown the league, and then nobody even remembers it. I defy anyone to remember anything about that game whatsoever. So yeah, the cups are distant second here. In all those calculations that you make, it's always like, right, well, if Celtic do this, if Celtic drop points here, but all of that is predicated on Rangers being able to continue winning or start winning all of their games, and they've proven time and again this season that they're not really capable of doing that. As much as I'm partially joking about is it one hand on the trophy just now, but I will be willing to have that conversation in January-ish, like see if we've beaten them again, and Celtic have potentially strengthened. Meanwhile, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst is out there saying that he doesn't know what's going on with their transfer plans and all that.
With his transfer plans?
Well,
which is astonishing when you think about it.
His team's transfer plans,
They asked him, I don't know if this is specifically referred to, they says, you thinking of bringing a striker in January? He goes, I don't know. Right, okay. Sounds
it's not Christmas Day, mate. You can't ask for something. You don't say, I don't want to impose. I don't want to say I want a striker. It's a bit.
You just wait to see what's under the trees.
It's a bit presumptuous of me to say I want a striker.
He's going to scurry down the marble staircase on Christmas Day. Look under the tree. Oh fuck, nothing. Coal again.
Cholak. No, it doesn't quite work. Does it? I needed work.
Ruined it.
They are definitely beleaguered, and I think the conversation isn't far off. It's not far off. We're talking about how they possibly come back from this, because everything, you look at them just now, nothing's going well for them. You can't really see how they're going to possibly turn it around. All their best players, all the players that they keep turning to in the press about how you need to play Morelos because in the past he's been a genius. He's been the guy who's dug them out of the hole. He's done nothing. No. He get booked after about a quarter of a second of the second half against St Mirren, and it was the thing that led directly to St Mirren scoring as well, was him taking a booking for nothing, for just running into a guy. Ryan Kent, you'd be as well just no bothering talking about anymore because he's a complete dud at this point of his Rangers career. So I don't know. I mean, if they're waiting for guys to come back, John Suter, is that who's going to save them? I had to laugh as well. Barry Ferguson's in the press talking about how they need more ex-Rangers players in there as well.
I know. I don't. Admittedly, I only saw the headline, but Barry Ferguson says, renowned football brain and genius. Barry Ferguson said, I really firmly believe we need an ex-Rangers player there. Who possibly could you mean, Barry? Because, obviously Giovanni is an ex-Rangers player. Everyone knows that. But for some reason, Giovanni doesn't count. But Barry's like, we really need, a guy with maybe Rangers captain, maybe a guy that played in, down south Cup, a Blackburn, but then came back. Maybe you need a guy like that. A guy with some short brown hair that doesn't have a hairstyle,
It's almost like he's not including Giovanni Van Bronckhorst in his assessment there. And it kind of goes back to a conversation we had just last week about a certain type that they really go for in that fan base. I won't bother. Give us the clicks. Go back and watch last week's episode for the description of what they kind of want in there.
Well, my point was he's heavily insinuating towards himself.
Oh yeah, that's it.
It's either him or Kevin Thompson. That's what he's doing. And
Bob Malcolm.
But this is all predicated on the fact that Celtic are so good. And this is all it comes down to. If we weren't the winning machine that we were, I firmly don't believe that the likes of Kent and Morelos and all these guys, they'd probably put in better performances because they'd have something to play for. But they know that the league's gone now. We're not allowed to say it because we'll get slagged for saying it so early. But it's going to need a monumental turnaround from them and from Ange Postecoglou to see Rangers get back into this league belly, and I just don't see Ange letting standards slip.
No, I don't either. I think it's going to be a case of keep winning. Celtic don't have any European distractions now. They do have a January window where we can actually strengthen our squad rather than anything else. So you're looking at it going, right, what's it got to take? A swing from Rangers to start winning all these games and a swing from Celtic to stop winning all these games. So for that, you're looking at Celtic like last season when we were looking at it, and we are going into the second half of the season believing because we can see progress. They can't see that. They are getting worse. They have had a terrible Champions League group where they get absolutely pasted in every game, and they've got players coming up where Kent, Morelos, if MD ever wanted to speak to them in January, they can. Don't know why. So you're looking at it going, right, okay, last season Celtic were sort of on the up. We've seen Celtic were going to bring in players and get better because something was building. We had a massive rebuild. Rangers, it's the opposite. They're going the opposite way. They're going to have the rebuild in the summer. So looking at the point swing that would need to happen, the form swing, Celtic would need to lose, 5 games between,
You're laughing.
between now and the end of the season. They haven't done that in the last year.
And it just goes to show you, everything can go your way when you're trying to make a football club tick, can it? I mean, everything can go your way. You can have league success, Europa League final, in the Champions League, sell players for big money, but it's not easy. It's not easy to come up against a winning machine that is Celtic. So back to sort of more domestic related matters, back to talking about the game, and I want to talk to one player in particular who probably wants to talk to us, Stephen, maybe more you, David Turnbull. But after us sitting last week saying that, it probably what inspired him, but after us sitting last week saying, if you're looking at the squad as a whole, after Ange's comments about moving players on and wanting to blah, 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 we fingered David Turnbull as someone who might not want to, whose contribution might be limited going forward, and he really showed us.
Yeah, well, that was an unpleasant description of that there, but I don't think anything's changed from what I said. I mean, people will obviously come in and say, I see haters, what you saying now? I mean, what I said last week was that I think that David Turnbull's a really good player, but if you're wanting to evolve the squad, then eventually a certain level of ability should be upgraded. That's the nature of upgrading any squad.
It is quite fanciful, but is it? Because Celtic don't keep this squad and keep adding players. Players come and go. So that was my point. Why get rid of a David Turnbull? The guy had more goal contributions than Tom Rogic last season. So why would you just want on you go, mate? If you're bringing in better, fine, but keep him. Build a squad that way.
I mean, but if you're asking me who, would I rather get rid of Matt O'Reilly, Hatate, or David Turnbull? Do I think I could improve on any of those players? It would be David Turnbull, and that's what I mean by making a squad better, by sort of refreshing things. You don't get rid of your best players. We will do that as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, to bring up the overall quality of the squad.
Get rid of Aaron Moy then.
We'll definitely do that as well. That'll definitely happen.
Time will get rid of Aaron Moy, I think, in time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have any further to go with this point. It's
not
just
that he's going to die, by the way. It's been that he will age out of the Celtic team.
Yeah, but David, this week, brilliant, a fantastic assist for Maida's goal, and a nicely taken. Good composure for the first goal against Ross County. But he's good. I don't really.
I thought Stephen wanted to eat his words a bit. I wonder if your perspective had changed, but he's sticking by it. Martin Melly, David Turnbull's midfield mate there, Reo Hatate, was unbelievable. Yeah. How good! I mean, we're going to talk about the Celts in the World Cup, but I can't wait to see how good Japan are, because if he cannot get in that Japan team,
you're looking at him and Kyogo going, right, fair enough, boys. You sort of control the controllable, do what you can. What could they have done more to get into a World Cup squad? Because the two of them are playing in the Champions League. Not a lot of the rest of them, like you said, on the Breakfast of Champions aren't doing that. But Hatate and Kyogo are performing week in, week out for Celtic. Maybe not Champions League level because it's so difficult, but Reo Hatate especially, some of the touches, the passing, there was a ball that dropped him in the middle of the park and he just works his feet and plays it away. And like you said a few weeks, Stephen, ago, everything good Celtic do, Reo Hatate is at the centre of. He's maybe not the guy making the assist, but he's starting off the move. He's making that pass to someone. And the guy's just a pleasure to watch. And still improving for me. There's still some things he can do. At the end of the game, he sort of collapsed on the turf, and I thought, you need this break, mate. There's been a few games recently because it's been tight. We haven't been able to substitute guys like him and O'Reilly, and with Cal McGregor being suspended, it's sort of stretching those midfield options. So having him in there, he's just a pleasure to watch. Maybe that fitness thing in this break now will do him the world of good, because we've seen last season how he's come back from having that break. But what a player to watch. He's just unbelievable. Sometimes he can go in and out of games, but see, when he's in the game, there's not much better.
Do you remember last season, Reo Hatate, it was either he wrote an article on his own or he did an interview.
It was a blog or something, wasn't it?
A blog, and he was talking about how he was disappointed with his performance and he'd not adjusted to Scotland, and he felt like he didn't show the fans the real him, but he felt once he got time to adjust to the Scottish football and the culture and the city and all that, he felt like I'll feel a lot better and I'll be able to show the real fans. That's the face I made when I was thinking about it. You sort of think it's come true. That's kind of like that's what he needed, and he was obviously very honest with himself. But looking at him now, you go, God, he's settled.
Well, these guys they're human beings. At the end of the day, they deserve the right to do that. They deserve the right to adjust to new surroundings, especially coming from Japan as well. It's not a well-trodden path. We have had players from Japan before, of course, famously Nakamura, and I'd even go as far as to say that Hatate is the Japanese Nakamura. I think he is.
You think so?
I think he is. I think he's our new version. But actually, it conjures up like the old conversations about the COVID season. Remember, we had the conversations about Barkas and Duffy and all that, and how we expected them to perform. But then you think about the circumstances they had to play in, and it just ruined things for them. It's not necessarily that anyone's a bad player, but we do need to remember that these guys are just guys. There's young guys at the end of the day, and Hatate is, he's not necessarily all that young a player, but he did deserve that bedding in period, because what was clear from right away about Hatate was how good a player he was, because he burst onto the scene. It's not like he took his time showing what he's got. He burst onto the scene and played really well straight away. Massive goals, the one against Hearts, against Rangers and everything. So it was just that it dipped off, and that was the bedding in period that he deserved. But on the international thing, obviously it was kind of big news here that he wasn't making the World Cup squad. I don't know what the situation is there. I don't know what the dynamic is in that squad, but I think it might just be that the Japan manager might just be aware of it and think, well, I've just not got space. I've just not got space for that type of guy. He might have other players who are quite similar, who are more established, because while everyone's been talking about how Hatate has only been a professional footballer for like 3 years or something like that, other players might have just become more established in that time, and he's just missed the kind of window.
You're being too understanding. These decisions are going to cost the Japan manager his job.
Possibly.
Because that's what happens in international football. There'll be expectations for this tournament. If Japan don't reach it, immediately the Japanese press and the Japanese fans are going to go, well, hold on a minute. We had two guys playing in the Champions League. One of them in Kyogo was the top goal scorer in Japan, moved to Scotland as the top goal scorer there last year, might end up the top goal scorer this year. You've got Reo Hatate pulling the strings against Real Madrid. They can't get into this team and we can't get out of the group. You're sacked. And I think that's probably what's going to happen, because I think we're too precious with this. We're giving them far too much credit. Those two players need to be in a World Cup squad, and Melly sort of said it. What more could you possibly expect the pair of them to do? If they're on their international manager going, right, so all these things I've done, what else do I need to do to get into your Japan team? And if you're saying, kind of doesn't fit the system, bollocks as far as I'm concerned.
I do know of the little I do know about the Japan team. They've got that guy Kamada, who I was pissed off with in the Europa League final because he was rotten against Rangers. They've got a guy breaking through at Brighton who's scored a couple of goals recently. He's got an amazing scoring record from midfield. So it might just be unfortunate that he's just not found a space in the 26-man squad. Kyogo, I'm more surprised at, to be honest. Hatate's only got one cap, and it was, I think, maybe fairly recently, so he doesn't have that international pedigree just yet. It might just have come along too soon for him. Kyogo, I'm really surprised at, though, how they didn't find a place in a 26-man squad for him, but also did. I know they're different players, but the idea that Maeda get in and Kyogo didn't is puzzling to me, so I'm not sure what's going on there. But Hatate, I did understand, is as surprised as we were at how amazing he's been recently, because he's been a genius for Celtic this season, like proper standout stuff. And I don't really care that sometimes he dips off a little bit, sometimes he misplaces passes. So what? Because what we've seen, the enormous positive he brings to the team. And I'll reiterate, Melly's already mentioned it, but what I said a few weeks ago is that I'm almost certain you could trace back almost all of this season. We've only played 15 league games so far. If you looked back at 60% of those goals, I bet they've come from something that Hatate has done. Not necessarily the assist, but he will have been involved in some way or other.
Adding Kyogo's finishing to that, then these Japanese players are maybe 80% involved in 80% of Celtic's goals. Yet I get the Hatate thing because he has one cap. I'm astounded by it, but the Kyogo thing, you bring a guy like that, it's not as if the guy's ahead of him. I'm going, well, okay, he's playing in Serie A, he's doing this, he's doing that. They don't look up to the calibre of Kyogo, so he's obviously just picked somebody else, which is weird.
And it's unfortunate for Kyogo because, as we've discussed before, he probably won't get another chance to feature at the World Cup, given what age he is. But at Reo Hatate, the opportunity might come up for him again.
Good for Celtic, but isn't it? We're looking at this going, right, so if Celtic were going to relinquish this league title, all players have to go downhill rapidly. And with O'Reilly, Hatate, Kyogo, Giakoumakis, if they don't get injured, all these guys getting rested up, Callum McGregor coming back, a signing or two in January, are you going to get better?
Well, yeah, we probably are. See, if we are going to improve though, Matt O'Reilly needs to stop handling that football.
The idiot.
We need a jingle for this. This is the section of the podcast where we talk about VAR. Referees of Scotland, by bringing in VAR, you took a massive shit with your clothes on. That's what you've done. You have to, because once again, and Ange said, I think he's finally given up on it. Yeah, he's been like, I'm sick of talking about it. One thing I found quite interesting with Ange was he skewered the Scottish press, and I'm so glad he did. He goes, I came from Australia, which when I arrived here I was told was some sort of footballing backwater. We famously said on a podcast, it's us that's the backwater. So he's not including us in that, right? He goes, we had VAR 5 years ago. And you're bringing it in, it's 4 or 5 years old in Australia, and you're bringing it in with fanfare. He goes, you should have just brought it in and it's ready to go. He goes, I don't have time for teething problems. You shouldn't have teething problems for something that's been here. Just bring it in when it's ready, and then we can stop talking about it. But the fact of the matter is, it's quite astounding to suggest this, right? But the refereeing melee has gotten worse. It's gotten worse with VAR.
I don't know if it has. I don't know if it has. I think this was just always the case, and this is what we thought. Like,
you just mean instead of being wrong once, now they get to be wrong twice. Yeah, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Even simple decisions, like even for the Ryan Kent penalty for Rangers, that's a penalty.
Aye.
And then
he got booked for diving, didn't he?
Yeah, booked for diving. So to get that so far wrong, and again, it's looking at the decisions again. The Matt O'Reilly one, like, what's the guy to do? What's the guy to do? Like, not play with hands? It's impossible. But then Anthony Ralston crosses a ball, it hits a guy's hand, and it's not a penalty. What's the difference?
My problem here is, right, the offside rule, we'll talk about offside in a minute. the handball rule is so open to interpretation, right, that seemingly referees can just give it whenever they want if it just hits your hand, right? But as Melly says, they're also not giving it for the exact same things. And somebody needs to explain it to us. And not just us. Michael Stewart, boy, he was furious.
Michael Stewart beside himself.
He was beside because refs, nobody can get their head around this. Nobody can understand why, as you say, the O'Reilly one was, but the other one wasn't, or the one at Hart, all these penalties that are being given. I got a stat, I dug out a stat, right, and I had to take it on my phone here, so my apologies whilst I looked down at my phone. Highly unprofessional, right? 63 games pre-VAR, I presume that's this year or this season, right? 63 fixtures, right? 17 penalties, right? 25, 18 penalties.
25 penalties in 18 games.
Yes,
yeah.
Post-VAR. 18 penalties in 25 fixtures post-VAR.
Nearly won a game.
We are apparently, when England brought VAR in, their penalties went down. Ours have skyrocketed. Everything's a penalty.
Could I ask you, like, we all knew this was coming in. We all thought this was going to be a shit show. Did you ever think it'd be this bad?
No, well, I mean, I have to laugh now that thinking back to the post or the pre-VAR chat about how this was going to solve all the problems. Remember, we were all gloating at each other. Remember, like, fans of different teams are all gloating at each other. I see when VAR comes in, this is going to take this away for you. Yous are going to be suffering the most from VAR. It turns out it's just basically ruined the game here. Yeah. And the thing, see about VAR, right? It's like a red herring here. That's not the problem. VAR, too often people talk about VAR as if it's some sort of malevolent robot that's come in to take over the place and ruin the game. VAR's just a tool. It's actually
just a guy.
Aye, well,
it's a man.
Well, I mean,
in a room.
Aye, but the system. People talk like it's an AI or something like that that's just decided to come in and just mess shit up and just ruin the game. That's not what's happened. It's just a tool. It's just a device that people use or a method of devices that people use to get decisions right. It's still going through the same brains that have always been, and that's the problem. It's not that VAR has been introduced.
Problem.
It's really, but I mean, some of the decisions we got on Saturday, right? There was the one, I mean, the handball itself.
We're talking about VAR, but this is about purely the referee's performance, nothing to do with VAR. It was baffling to me, wasn't it? We were at the game and we couldn't make head nor tail. There was boos at half time.
There was boos at half time, and not in a good way. The SBOOS. There's strictly none of that in Scottish football. God forbid. But what is it? The decision in the first half was that where the keeper claimed the ball, dropped it at his feet. Kyogo came in to challenge him, so he picks it back up again, and immediately Kyogo turns round. And I'll admit, at the stadium, I was just like, what? What has happened there, right? Kyogo immediately looks to the ref, so everyone else knows the rules, right? And the ref just makes something up.
Yeah,
it just makes
that is astounding.
It literally makes it up. And I'm convinced, right? I'm convinced that these refs have now gotten into a situation where it's more than they bargained for. They probably get into this when it was dead easy, and now VAR has shown these people up for. Yep. I mean, I don't think the refereeing has got worse. I agree with Mel. I think it's just exposing them now for what's happened. This has nothing to do with VAR, but I'm convinced now that they're all out there exposed. Like the proverbial, when you switch the light on, or the cockroaches scurry into the corner and all that, right? So that's a very pleasing image there for referees. But anyway, I'm convinced now that they are now avoiding making decisions that they think are going to get them into trouble. So to see these little obscure decisions that are still part of the rules. So for example, like the wee ones, like foul throws, stealing 10 yards at a throw-in, taking a free kick from wherever you want, time wasting, stuff like that, and especially this re-picking up the ball thing. They don't want anything to do with it because it makes them seem anal.
I want to mildly disagree with you there. I think the picking up the ball thing was he didn't want to give that because he knew it would absolutely result in a Celtic goal.
Well, because
he's like, if I do this, the game's a bogey. And the way he just dismissed David Turnbull, that get away, and then made up some sort of rule. I mean, we've joked about it before on this podcast, how Scottish football refereeing is not so much a strict adherence to a codified rule book of how the game should be played. It's just a vibe. It's just a vibe. I don't really feel like that should be an indirect free kick to Celtic because it'll kind of ruin the game. So why don't we all just agree to play on? Well, that's not how football works.
They're just so rare. See those indirect free kicks inside the box, they're just so rarely given. I just think he just didn't want to be one of those guys who gave one in case it did lead to a goal and it's all of a sudden it's a controversy because nobody else gives those types of free kicks.
Definitely not play on though.
No, it's not play on, and it certainly isn't a free kick to Ross County, which is what they gave. So he just made something up. Yeah. I think just prior to that had someone jumped along with the keeper. So the keeper come up and got it. Someone jumped with him, and I think he gave the free kick for that. Again, you've just completely made that up. I don't
think they write things down. They have to do a match report. Maybe they do write it down, but we certainly don't see it. Just when you mentioned throw-ins there, just to hark back to the Motherwell game, is there a rule against hitting the ball off a Celtic player's head when he's not even on the pitch before a throw-in? That again was peculiar to me. Don't comment on it. Actually, I don't want to drag us all the way to the Motherwell game, but the refereeing standard and the fact that we're here every week talking about it, and it's great that Celtic are winning because it means you get a chance to moan about it because you're not allowed to moan about it. But it's almost on the verge of pure comedy now.
I'd be tempted to. Sorry, mate. I'm gonna let you finish. But I'd be tempted to say this is like...
Don't come over, oh, can you?
Oh, God,
we don't need any conspiracy theories about why Mar's gone wrong.
On conspiracy theories.
I bet Kanye's got some ideas.
Oh, yeah. I reckon
whose fault it is. No, we don't agree, incidentally.
No. Well, on conspiracy theories, you'd be tempted to look at this and say it's like a massive problem in Scottish football, and it is. There's no doubt about it that it's terrible in Scotland. But then we went into the Champions League against Real Madrid and had one of the worst refereeing performances we've had this season as well. I can't remember her name, but she looked completely out of her depth in that game as well. So it's not even.
She's going to the World Cup though. No Scottish refs are, but she is.
Well, there we go. I mean,
I have forgotten her name as well, but I did see she was.
That's
on the list.
absolutely fine. Still better than Scottish refs. However, still wasn't great. It wasn't a great refereeing performance that night. So it's not even as if I can zero in on it just being a Scottish problem. It just seems to be across the board.
To be fair, I'd without getting into an elongated back and forth, I think it's much worse in Scotland.
Oh, it is,
I think it's much
but it's
worse.
not exclusively. Is my point? Yeah,
bad refereeing isn't exclusive to Scotland, Melly, but I mean. It's unfathomable. Like as you say, you're sitting at the stadium and you're watching these games and you're just thinking, what rule is that you've implemented?
That's my major problem is that what you just said a couple of minutes ago is like, see if they were sort of abiding by these rules strictly and you can go, right, okay, we know why he's given that because every ball that hits hand is a penalty, or if a keeper does that, that's a free kick. If they were so anal about it, you could go, well, they're just really sticking to the rules. But they're out there, get a new rule book. They're making up their own rule books as they go. And that's the problem. We're all looking at this going, explain that decision to me. And the one as well where Haksabanovic gets booked because him and a guy jump and the guy hurts himself while jumping. Yeah. And you're like, where's the free kick there? Where's the injury caused there? It's an accident. And yet, even if it was that, you're like, why a booking? Because people are annoyed or hurt. It was one of the worst refereeing performances I've seen. Not huge decisions, but just wee decisions. You're like, what is going on here? That this is this guy just been drafted in somewhere and he doesn't know what he's doing? Because it looks baffling, and you're looking at VAR as on top of that as well. It's like every goal that goes in, you're sort of second guessing. Like, is this going to be even goals that there's no way VAR can look at, and yet they're still holding their ear? Like, you don't see anything, so there's nothing clear and obvious to do with it.
See, to an extent, going to the games, right, going to see live football, you're always at a disadvantage from a televised audience. Some things you see better, some things you don't see at all. Clearly, you don't get the benefit of replays or anything like that when you're at the game. That's, to an extent, that's always going to be the case, and you're always going to be missing certain things. But I'm genuinely coming away for these games thinking, I don't understand half of what went on in that game. And you're having, like, half time, I'm consulting group chats and all that. I'm trying to get some sort of tweet about what this decision is.
No, you're referring to the best Celtic community online, which is 20 Minute Tim's Discord.
Yeah, of course. The Discord is always on top of these things. But I'm honestly that we've mentioned it a number of times. But Patreon.com/20 Minute Tims, we do it at the Match Podcast. We record yards from the stadium. And I'm having to go on there and say, I don't know what happened there. I'm going to need to see it back. Sorry, can we talk about something else?
Like Arsene Wenger, isn't he?
Basically, I didn't see it. But I'm honestly, I can't process these refereeing decisions at all until I've seen the game back, which is bizarre to me.
Which is actually, Stephen, what you've touched on there is really crucial. You know, joking aside and all this sort of stuff, the fundamentals of football have completely changed. You're absolutely right, because football is a sport. It's a spectator sport. You should understand fully what's going on in the game at the time. As a guy sitting in the ground, or a girl, obviously, but if you're sitting in the ground, my tone there was like, girls shouldn't be allowed. Oh, bloody, if you're ticking boxes letting girls watch the football, that's not what I watched.
Bloody refs and everything these days as well.
Well, I mean, if you're watching the game, you should be able to understand. You shouldn't have to refer back to a videotape of, right, okay, so that happened, so that, right, okay, and then you're Googling the rules, and then you're watching slow-mos. The game is just, is it gone? Is the game gone?
Going to need to hand us out little printed out guides as we walk into the stadium. We say to try and fathom out these rules as they're happening.
The big problem as well is, like, it seems like now that VAR's in, the refs have been like, right, just get to this World Cup break, just get to it, like Rangers, just get to it unscathed. That hasn't happened, but probably with Rangers they're going to keep a hold of Bran Brockhurst. So what's going to change with these referees in this break? Nothing's going to change. No. Remember, they brought this in early because they thought it was a good idea, it's ready to go, and they've just been completely shown up that it's, well, VAR is ready, apart from that one in the Motherwell game.
Yes.
These referees are not ready, and they're not going to be ready in 4 weeks' time when we start again. Not going to be ready at the end of this season. The referees need a complete overhaul in this country.
A final thing on that, because see, past joking about it, I like joking about the referees and decisions and all that, but see when it becomes infuriating and I can't understand it, as I say, while walking away for the game completely baffled by what I've seen. I don't really like talking about it. It saps the life out of me. We never get any podcasting, so we could sit here and talk about refereeing decisions every week. It's not
funny though.
Well, yeah, that it's funny, but then once it kind of goes past that, to be serious for a single second, if I'm allowed on here, I think we're heading towards something with these referees, and I'm not talking about some sort of uprising. I'm not calling. I could be. Do you remember that time they went on strike and we got a load of better referees? Don't threaten us with a good time.
Never spoken about that again. See, if you keep this up, we'll go and strike in the middle of the guys from Malta and Slovakia coming in refereeing the games. And it was perfectly fine and nothing went awry. But no, you're right, because there's no way this level of criticism can keep up, and it's not us just, as you say, shitting about on the podcast, having a joke about it. It is genuinely football pundits, even guys who are usually quite mild-mannered. Every single pundit, every manager is looking at this going, yous have made an arse of this. Yeah. You've really, really made an arse of this. And as Melly said, it's not just linesmen, it's not just referees. The linesman's decision at the Motherwell game for the Jota goal, that was kind of more a technical fallout from VAR. I think the linesman, Jota, I initially thought Jota was offside. And I think Jota thought he was offside as well, because just his reaction was muted in the way he looked. And he was kind of looking over at the linesman. I think the linesman flagged for it. Yeah, but one of the cameras was looking at the dugout and they didn't have an angle to show. And you just think, this is basics. Do you know, just as an aside, the World Cup is going to have AI offside calls.
Right.
That's not a prelude to a joke. That's the new thing. They're going to have like AI automated offside calls.
Just you wait till 2030, mate. We'll have that.
We'll have a speaking spell, spitting things out at the sides of the pitch. A VTech, aye.
But see with the Motherwell decision there, like we've barely even talked about Ross County get a penalty from that one, but the Motherwell one as well, where Jota's offside. Again, there is no way the linesman can tell that is clearly offside, can he? He put his flag up straight away, and even with VAR looking at that multiple times, okay, the camera's not on properly, but how can you as a linesman say definitively that's offside? It's a guess again for me.
It's never too early to play holiday music, and it's never too early to start thinking about gifts. Whether it's for a friend or the friend in your pants, you can make this season jolly with Manscaped. Do your little drummer boy a favour and use the Lawnmower 4.0 to avoid another silent night in the bedroom. Then add in Manscaped's top-of-the-line shower products that have the people thinking, all I want for Christmas is you. Santa cares about his sack, and so should you. Look nice when you get naughty by going to manscaped.com and use the code TIMS for free shipping and 20% off, Stephen.
That's right, Jamie. Now that you've groomed your candy cane, it's time to make sure you don't smell like a reindeer with the Platinum Package's shower products. All of Manscaped's shower gear is sulfate-free, vegan, and made to have your skin feeling hydrated and smelling fresh. But smelling good doesn't stop at the shower. The Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and Crop Reviver Ball Toner, can solve stank problems all day long. Once they touch your sack, you'll never go back.
Wonderful. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code TIMS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use the code TIMS. Manscaped, get your jingle balls ready for the holidays. Right, we've done the VAR thing. We've done the referees and we've done all that. Handballs aside though, Matt O'Reilly has been sensational recently.
I think he deserves huge credit for what he's done this season. We've always, I think across the fan base, we've all been talking about how far he's come in this season or this year since he's come onto the scene with MK Dons and come all the way up to Celtic. So he's gone from League One to the Champions League. We've all made that point. We've all seen the comparisons, the pictures of him picking up an award in League One and then picking up his man of the match in the Champions League. I'd even go further than that to say it's great that he plays in the Champions League and makes does quite well, shows up pretty well against these players, doesn't look at all out of place. But even when you look at what he's actually doing for Celtic as well, the brilliant assist for Kyogo's goal during the week there. It's not just that, the role he's been asked to play in this team. Yeah. So he comes in and he's a sort of, on the surface of things, a quite attacking-minded midfielder. Comparisons to, not direct comparisons, but replacement for Rogic chat is made, right? So that's the kind of thing that's circling around Matt O'Reilly. Looks a nice, elegant player, nice and creative and all that. But now he's just playing a completely different role. And arguably he has gone from being this League One footballer to potentially playing the most important role in Celtic's team. And that's huge. That he has come in and replaced Callum McGregor, who we all said And I would still say is irreplaceable. He doesn't bring exactly what Callum McGregor does, but he's come in and settled into basically playing the most important role, arguably, in the team, and has been absolutely brilliant at it. I think there was an interview he gave not so long ago, I think when he was at Fulham, where he said he's not really comfortable in that role. I think a previous manager had identified that he could play in that sort of number 6 or as a deeper line role. He's good at it, but he doesn't particularly enjoy it, and that's, you know, he kind of wanted to play a wee bit further forward. But quite often in football, we talk about guys who never complain, right? He just gets on with it as sort of shorthand for he's shite, but he runs around a lot. But I think it actually applies quite helpfully here in that he's just getting on with it. He's just getting on this crucial role in the Celtic midfield and has been playing extremely well. Was he flawless in the Champions League? Did he like boss it against Real Madrid? Maybe not, but he's still young, he's still learning. I think he deserves credit for how he's gone about his business, because we all expected it to be Abelgard. We never expected for a single second for O'Reilly to...
I forgot he existed.
Exactly, a total mystery. But the first time he played, everyone's like, I don't know about that. But would you really... I mean, are you turning up to any game now and seeing O'Reilly in that role and thinking, oh, we look seriously weak in there? Not at all for me.
It's the physical side of the game as well he's really taken to melee.
Yeah, as in, like, he's got that sort of... The Kyogo assist is just shows what he can do, because like in a defensive side he managed to press the guy into the mistake, wins the ball back, but he can win the ball back. He breaks up a lot of attacks for Celtic, he starts a lot of attacks, and I'm now looking at it going, I was worried when Callum McGregor came out of the team. I thought in the Motherwell game Celtic did miss him, because I've felt in the last few games we've missed that guy who knows where to drop in to get the ball and do that. But Matt O'Reilly has been brilliant. I can't fault the guy. And look, Celtic have won every game that, and domestically, that Cal McGregor hasn't been there. And to say you've lost your captain, the guy we thought was irreplaceable, absolute pivotal in this team, for somebody else to drop a position that's not their own position and play in there is brilliant. So again, I'll put it on you. What happens when Cal McGregor comes back? Does O'Reilly move forward, or does Cal McGregor move forward?
McGregor, get him out, fraud.
Him and Turnbull get them out. There's 3 midfielders for the rest of the season.
Aye, McCarthy's one of them. Eddie Gucci's another. I don't know. I think he just moves back into a more attacking.
Jamie won't sit in the fence. Come on.
Callum McGregor goes back to Callum McGregor's position. He put Matt O'Reilly forward. I think that's what's going to happen.
See, on
he could just sit in the fence.
I totally agree. I think he'll just move forward. I think we'll go back to the sort of O'Reilly, Hatate, McGregor axis in there. But when
sounds good, doesn't it? Sounds good.
When you were talking about missing
David
McGregor,
Turnbull,
he comes in next.
Comes in, scores, makes me shut up, and then moves on. On the missing McGregor thing, there was a moment very early on against Motherwell where they actually almost scored. Van Veen went through and hit the post, but that came from Starfelt coming out with the ball, and he tries to pass it out to Hatate. It's a decent pass, but Hatate just waits on it, and it gets stolen off him. They break forward and hit the post. Don't think that happens with Callum McGregor in the team, because I think he drops in to take the ball off Starfelt, probably in a better position.
On that moment, what did you think of Joe Hart?
Made a wid.
Basically, he was quite slow there. He was moving like dusty old Alan McGregor a wee bit.
I still love Joe Hart. I think he's been great for Celtic, but I'm starting to look at him in games. While he hasn't made any massive mistakes, it's starting to look like, right, come the summer, I think it will be time.
Yeah.
If Joe Hart come the summer has 2 league titles under his belt, played in the Champions League with Celtic, and possibly another couple of trophies, you're going, Joe, you deserve to walk off into the sunset. But just right now, while he's still good and still doing his job, I think in the summer is the time to go.
Well, he's 36 at the end of the season as Joe Hart. There's no shame in that. We've had players that have come in, like Colo Touré, great example, comes in at the latter stage of his career, gives us a couple of solid years.
Ian Wright.
We could go on.
Carlton Cole.
Big Z. So many. Dion Dublin, who could forget? They've all done a turn for us. But Joe Hart, I think Melly's right. I think Joe Hart's been good for us. We were big backers of Joe Hart in this podcast. One of the few. If we have to pat ourselves in the back, one of the few backers of Joe Hart in this podcast, he's been terrific for us. But I think, as you say, Melly, just on that specific moment, I was like, God, he's a bit creaky.
He is starting to groan a little under the pressure, the physical pressure. I would suggest though that maybe a break will do him good. He's going to get that just now. Now again, it's not a miracle cure. It's not going to turn around the potentially struggling 36-year-old's not going to turn him around entirely, just getting a month off and a wee bit of warm weather training and all that in Australia. That I don't think that's going to necessarily fix everything. But it's early days for this. I think he still deserves to play, but he's been absolutely sensational for Celtic. He's been absolutely terrific over the piece, and not just the massive saves, because he's still been making those. He's made huge saves in the Champions League as well. But the intangibles, the leadership he's brought to this team in the absence of guys like Scott Brown and all that, I think has been invaluable. However, you do get to a point where all of that stuff doesn't outweigh not being able to deliver on the pitch anymore. And if he is a little bit, if we're dealing in a game with small margins on it, if he's just that wee second slower getting off his line, if he's not coming claiming things in the box and all that is a difficulty for this team. However, I would say it's a mild concern at the moment, with something to possibly keep an eye on going forward. But eventually it will come. We will have to replace him and move on.
There's been a couple of crosses flashed across. We're like, come for that. You need to come for that. And then there's the usual one where the ball's passed to him and he turns inside onto his line. Like, Joe, come on, man. I'm all for like a few of the guys are just hoof it away. Like, we're trying to play football, but it's getting dangerously to the point where one of them's going to slip into the net. But this is where we'll sort of see what Celtic and Ange are made of, and I think we will, whether it be January, which I doubt it will, because Celtic have got just domestic duties going forward, but in the summer I think it will be, right, Joe, you've come in, done a fantastic job, but let's leave on a high here, and if we're looking at it in the summer, that's a position where Celtic will see to go to the next level. We need to bring in somebody.
Here's a painting of a Spitfire, some gift vouchers for home base. Thanks very much, Joe. It's been a pleasure.
I mean, I don't think we would.
Home base still home?
I don't think we would put Joe out to pasture. I think he's a professional enough. I think we'd probably maybe allow him to make the decision. Of course, then if he didn't make the decision, we would put him out to pasture. But I think at 36, Joe Hart might also look at it and go, maybe it's time to move on. Melly's been choking this whole podcast to talk about Said Haksabanovic. So
love him.
Here you are.
Yeah, I just think he's been class recently, and I think again with him, I think once this breaks out the way, I think the second half of the season we're really going to see the best of him. Coming in late in the window, you always wonder how's it going to work out, because you come in then bang straight into the Champions League games. It's difficult, but he's looked class. And again with missing Jota, you're like, that's going to be difficult for Celtic. He's come in and done just as well. If we can get the two of them in the team, he's been playing well. He's now adding goals to that, and it's winning goals now. It's not just the fourth in a 4-0 win or whatever. That was a winning goal where it's just lovely to watch. He's done it like a bowling ball, just like a curling right into the corner. Pure precision. Precision beats power.
Stephen, what is the thing that you should do, but with a bowling ball?
Right down the middle.
Right down the middle. Yeah. You really
want a wee curve on it.
No, you do. So you really, the whole thing about the bowling ball is it's supposed to go right down the middle.
You get a curve on it, then it comes
right
in the middle.
Right into the bottom corner with a bowling ball. I did like that analogy, but it ultimately doesn't work with bowling. But I do like
bowls,
it.
Bowls, Millie's think not 10-pin bowling. Bowls, sorry, mistake.
Oh, that goal was brilliant. Another one that I didn't fully appreciate until I got up the road and saw it back again. It was very reminiscent of, remember Gary Hooper's against Rangers all those years ago, where it almost looked as if it was passed until it just sort of curled into the bottom corner. The way he just passed it in as well, the level of casual there was. It was.
Callum McGregor used to have a goal like that, remember?
Well, for that goal, it's Hatate again pivotal, and he's the one that plays it into. Again, he'd set up the first one as well, but he just knocks it into him and he just passes it into the bottom corner with the demeanour of a man who was closing the fridge door with his hip, basically. That like a man nutmegging a toddler at a wedding or something like that with a balloon. That's how easy that's how easy he made that look. An absolutely brilliant goal, really really satisfying one to watch, and it's with his double that he got very recently. And that it was just the one thing that's been missing from his game. It was a couple of goals, and I think now that he's got some, it just seems as if it's just going to continue.
Always nice as well, because Celtic were trailing at that point, and what was it, Abada, Jota and Giakoumakis were standing on the touchline ready to come on, and you just kind of know it's going to be free forwards, and just to sign off, well, take me off now then, I've done my bit. It's just a touch of class from him, especially as well with the Turnbull goal, seeing Jota jump on, and you're just like, we can bring on Jota, Giakoumakis, Abada, Ross County. While they didn't, I don't know, it was weird, they didn't look a terrible team, but they have been playing poor this season, and it looked like a matter of time before Celtic got the goal. But you're just thinking, the depth we have there, and when I'm talking about going into this break and then coming back after that, like Starfelt's back up and running, McGregor should be back then, Haksabanovic and Jota should be in the team. We've got 2 strikers banging in the goals, so you're like, right, okay, this monumental swing is going to take. Not going to happen, is it?
You're right, Millie. We do have the break. Some footballers might be using it to go to Dubai, do the Neil Lennon, a few beers by the pool. But there are some players going to the World Cup. We have Cameron Carter-Vickers going to the World Cup. We have Aaron Moy. We have Josip Juranovic. We have Dyson Maeda all going to the World Cup. Pop quiz. Who do you think? It's not a quiz, a prediction. Who do you think is going to go? Who do you think is going to go further or furthest in the tournament?
Juranovic probably. I think his team are great. He's playing in there. And Croatia just always seem to do it for me. They're very good. I did watch the Japan-USA friendly recently, and USA just didn't look up to much. Japan do have a lot of good players, so maybe you can see why Hatate wasn't there, but I just think it's going to be difficult for all of them, apart from Juranovic probably. There's difficult groups. Australia probably up against it as well. Japan will be very difficult to get out of that group. They've got a very good group, but I think Juranovic, Croatia...
so they're in with Belgium, Canada and Morocco. So you would fancy them to sort of get out of that group, wouldn't you?
Yeah, possibly. I think USA are probably get the toughest run at it. I think they, as we previously discussed, they're the only group in the tournament that has all 4 teams in the top 20 of the FIFA rankings. So it's quite tough for England as well. Everyone thinks, England will just walk it, but it's a really tough group. I think Iran will be underrated. With dark horse in there. So I don't really expect any of them to do much in the tournament. I think Juranovic is by far the greatest chance of showing up in it because of the nature of him being in the best team. Croatia, although kind of like I've been waiting for Modric to get old one day, to just wake up one day and all of a sudden he's finished. Still hasn't happened yet, but I've been waiting for that with Croatia
only
as well.
27.
But Croatia seem like they've just been the same team for like decades now, and they just keep getting older and older, and they still turn up and do it. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on. But I think Japan will be up against it, and Australia, not to offend our valued Australian viewers and all that, but their team looks pretty bleak, to be honest. It's full of like Hearts players and Dundee United.
A lot of them are travelling from Scotland. A lot of the Australian players and Cum Dogs playing as well. I noticed that Aaron Moy has been available for, I think, 3 World Cups effectively since he made his debut for Australia. The only one he didn't get to was the one that Ange Postecoglou was the manager. he didn't pick him for the World Cup. Celts go to Australia. And you were saying you're sort of hanging on for Modric to get old and you're waiting for Croatia to fall off. I think the whole footballing world is hanging on waiting for Frank Lampard to get sacked. I am astounded. I think, honestly, just reading the press before this game, I think he might get sacked while he's in Australia. I think while he's over in Australia, the board will be doing things. I think they're looking at Bielsa and all this. I think they'll be working on replacing him while he's away out the country.
I think they'd already paid for his flights to Australia, and it's a hassle to change names and all that.
So
they basically just let him go.
Remember Villa sacked Gerrard, need to get the bus home. Imagine they sacked Lampard, needs to get the plane
22 hours home.
He just lands
sitting watching Up on his wee screen, just greeting and all that. Cool runnings.
Hopefully, Ange has already been linked with that job. They're just trying everything to link him with any job. I don't see it happening, but English league, it's more a coaches league now, so you're looking at guys want to be there, don't they? They've got great coaches at poor teams down there, and you're just looking at Lampard's really sticks out in that league, doesn't he?
He's the kind of guy that he just got the job, a bit like Steven Gerrard. Right? Okay, he just got the job, though probably more so based purely on his as an England legend.
Well, you look at what teams are able to do down there with the money they're paying managers. I think people sometimes underestimate it because hilariously Rangers, I mean, maybe they will get him, but Rangers were linked to Hasenhüttl when he get the sack for Southampton. I think people underestimate just how much they get paid down there. I think Rodgers went from 2.5 million at Celtic to about close to 10 down there with Leicester or something like that.
How many years ago was that now? 6 or 7?
I think Bielsa was on about 8 to 10 million and all that as well. So these teams are going out and getting former Real Madrid managers to come in and firefight to try and keep them up. That's what you're dealing with in England.
Well, Everton had Ancelotti.
Everton had Ancelotti, so you've got Lopetegui down there now as well. And what's his name at Aston Villa? It's escaped me for some
Good
reason.
evening.
Unai Emery, thank you.
Yes.
So guys like that coming into pretty middle of the road teams, and then you've got guys like Gerrard and Lampard, as Melly says, sticking out like a sore thumb.
He's a bit of an anachronism, isn't he, Lampard? He's a bit of a throwback to a time gone by when you would just get a player. I mean, Wayne Rooney as well at Derby didn't really work out. He's
a good manager. Well, Eddie Howe doing well down there.
Eddie Howe is doing quite well down there. But you know what? The less said about him, the better. His name's not allowed on this podcast. His name's not allowed on this podcast anymore. We're not just going over to play friendlies in Australia. Stephen, Ange is going over to be inducted into the Football Australia Hall of Fame. I think they called him the most significant and the most prominent Australian men's soccer figure working today.
Really?
Yeah, and obviously they're going to induct him at the Hall of Fame. But my question to you is, and you probably get it because it's quite easy, any other Celtic related Australian football inductees in the Hall of Fame?
Must be
Mark
I was going to say Harry Kewell right enough because he's Celtic related now as well.
I completely forgot about Harry Kewell. Yeah, no, Mark Viduka's in there as well.
Yeah.
But it just shows you, you're saying Ange is starting to get linked with job, just shows you the stature of the guy. He's clearly not one that just wants to. I know this is a terrible thing to say in a Celtic podcast, but he seems like a guy that's just not happy to just be doing a wee bit at Celtic. He likes international recognition. He likes to be on the stage, and coming to Celtic and doing what he's done in the Champions League, the way that he's turned the team around has really accelerated his profile in Europe, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think these friendlies as well will only serve to, as much as they don't necessarily mean a lot to us on the other side of the world, friendlies can be quite tedious affairs. I think only with this playing of these, and we'll probably get to see some of the reaction down there to the Australian fans. Yeah. We all felt the tidal wave of goodwill that arrived at us when Ange was signed up to the job, because, well, let's face it, let's admit it, we all kind of slightly turned our nose up at it when it was first announced, but Australia got in touch. So Australia made their feelings felt. So it's only now in the fullness of time, and this will probably strengthen it again, showing us just how much he means to just football down there, not only just Celtic fans, of which there are a number in Australia. So I'll be interested to see, as much as I don't really care about the results or really anything to do with it other than hoping nobody gets injured or anything like that. I'm really happy for Ange that he gets to go and do that.
I want us to pump Everton. I want us to make Frank Lampard's life a misery.
And in fairness to Ange has said it's important for the fans as well. And that doesn't necessarily include us if we don't really care about the nature of friendlies, but we talk all the time about the global fan base and how Celtic are a broad church, a massive club all over the world and all that. So you can't just exclude them. You can't just say, well, who cares about friendlies and all that. Australians are actually getting to see the team up close, so it can only be a good thing.
I want Frank Lampard coming back for that. I have to go the way stupid Australia to play stupid Celtic, stupid beating him, getting the stupid sack. It matters to me.
Imagine in another world that they hadn't a shat it out the friendly and it was Celtic v Rangers over there, man. We could have buried Gio in a friendly. Imagine that.
Well, and you know what? They've done the right thing, because they knew probably that they'd get battered in this friendly, but also they posted a loss in their accounts recently. I saw that was all over social media, and this couple of million could have helped them out a wee bit. I know. Could have helped them out, but no, they didn't fancy it. Melly, have you got much interest in Australia friendlies?
I look forward to it. It's going to be a long time without Celtic, so be interesting to see how we do. And it's another one that you're looking at going, I'm quite disappointed a few more players aren't at the World Cup. While it's good for Celtic and they get to rest up and all that, you want to see your guys out there representing on the big stage, so this will keep us tiding over for a bit. And it's good to get out there. The USA friendlies were always quite good as well, weren't they? We played some big teams over there, and as well, I'd like to get one over on Frankie Boy as well.
I do appreciate that point, and I agree as well, but I think you could equally say that it would be brilliant if we had more players at the World Cup as well. It would be better for them and better for probably Celtic in the long term. And just spoken about that in the past as well. Yes, there is the decreased potential of injury and arrest and all that, but I think it'd be great for Kyogo to go and play the World Cup and then come back to Scotland. I think it would have been brilliant. It's not happening now, and I think that's disappointing. So the only thing we're left with is to look at it as a positive, but I'd have loved him to go.
You look at that Celtic squad and there are players there that you think are no too far away, that you would probably see them at a World Cup, probably at the next one. Matt O'Reilly's probably got a decent shout again at the World Cup if he keeps playing the way he's playing. Reo Hatate has probably got a decent shout. Anyone else? I mean, if
They might
Scotland...
they might not be representing Celtic at that point.
No, they
So
won't be representing Celtic, but what I'm saying is they've got a bright international future.
right.
Obviously, the Celtic players playing for Scotland and all that sort of stuff. Am I missing anyone out? Jota?
Jota maybe, but a very good team.
Very good team. Very good team. Anyway, on that, should we wrap up?
Yeah, why not?
Support us on Patreon, patreon.com/20Minute Tims. Get extra podcasts, get extra content, get extra videos. It's not stopping during the World Cup, so support us if you like all this. It's patreon.com/20Minute Tims. But most of all, thank you so much for listening and watching.